Okay, I'm doing my July reading wrap up. Hello, my name is Leah. This is my channel, Dirty Little Literate, where I like to talk about books that are disturbing, disgusting, weird, etc., what have you. And I will say this month started out pretty hot, so took a turn for the worse, and a lot of the books I read, unbeknownst to me, like I thought I was maybe gonna be reading some weird and or disturbing books, and they ended up being pretty lackluster in terms of being disturbing. Not necessarily all of them were like bad books. Some of them I did like, but if you're not disturbing, why do I want to talk about you here? I kind of don't. So feels like a little bit of wasted time, but that's okay. I will say the first book that I read, one of my viewers really got me off to a good start because that book was Piercing by Ryu Murakami, and I loved this book. This is my favorite book that I read this month. I did make a video on this one, and this is definitely a horror, disturbing, violent, serial killer energy type book, even though this person is not necessarily a serial killer. This book was translated from Japanese into English, and it centers on a main character who recently had a baby with his wife, and he's a happy family man. He's just got a little bit of pestering anxiety about, how he wants to stab his baby with an ice pick, as one sometimes wants to, I guess. And he actually really doesn't want to. He's just obsessed with the thought of it. It is possible that perhaps he has a history of stabbing someone else with an ice pick. That might be a thing that happened, read the book. But anyways, he decides, okay, gotta find an outlet so that I don't stab my baby with an ice pick. Perhaps I should stab just, a random woman with an ice pick. And he's very detail oriented. He's making a really well thought out plan on how to execute this stabbing in a way where he will get away with it. And the intended victim ends up being not at all what he expects. And her personality and background and kind of trauma she has definitely makes her less of the easy victim that he thinks she's going to be. So I will not say any more than that. I definitely recommend this one if you like a horror, gooey, spooky book. I really love this one. It's so good, so pretty, smart, good. So that one is going to have to make up for the fact that this next book sucked. The next book that I read was Negative Space by Gillian Linden. I did not like this book, okay? And not only did it really miss the mark in terms of being disturbing, it wasn't even one of the ones where I'm like, okay, maybe not right for the channel, but I still enjoyed the read. I was like, okay, why am I reading this and why does anyone care? It basically felt like if you were to read a book about, a random teacher's life, and the teacher's just kind of like, oh gosh, gotta take my daughter to the dentist. Oh gosh, gotta have a little powwow by the water cooler. Like, just really fucking boring. I'm so bored. And if you're wondering, like, okay, what's the whole angle? Like, what is the actual plot that we are being sold on? The plot is that she I guess witnesses another beloved older man teacher. She doesn't know what she sees, to be honest. She sees him doing something with a younger student, but they're kind of huddled together, and the whole book is her trying to determine if she saw their heads kind of touch in a way that was a nudge or a nuzzle. She's like really being eaten up, like, well, it could have just been a nudge, but maybe it was a nuzzle. I don't know. Did I see a nuzzle? What do I do if I saw a nuzzle? And then, the meetings that ensue with other people, like, I do see how you could think that maybe that was a nuzzle, but we think it was probably a nudge. And this is like the entire book amidst that, and then her daughter having like a dentist appointment. That is what this book was. And this was one that I added to my list so long ago, and I swear this was like recommended by another booktuber, like, but I don't remember what the video was like in terms of like, oh, read books like this. Like, I don't know if it was just weird books, and maybe weird in the sense of like weird that we're reading this at all, weird that someone thought this was like a plot worth writing about. Normally I don't like to shit on books too much, but this one was just like such a bummer, because as I was reading it, I was like, unless they're really gonna hit me with something that takes it home, I know I'm reading something that I do not want to have to trouble any of you with having to hear about. Because again, I will talk about books that suck, especially when they're like in a ridiculous way where I want you to know how absurd it is. But this one was just like, I'm bored. I don't want you to be bored. I'm not going to do that to you. So in summation, do not read Negative Space by Gillian Linden. The next book that I read was Acts of Desperation by Nolan. And I did enjoy this book, but sometimes, you know, I have a love-hate relationship with books where the narrator is kind of hyping you up about something that's going to happen, where they're like, and then the thing happened, or and then everything changed, or oh, and then we did such horrible things. Like, because on one hand, that usually really does draw me in and it will keep me turning the pages, and so I like feeling invested. But the hate part of the relationship being that when I've hyped it up so much in my brain that in my mind you're about to decapitate someone, someone's about to decapitate you, and you know, something significant and bad still happens, but your head is still attached. I'm kind of like, how I misread the situation. So that's kind of what went on in this one. But the premise of the book is it's a woman in her early 20s living in Ireland who falls in love with this piece of shit loser dude who's just really, really ridiculously good looking and doesn't really have anything else going for him. He just sucks. He's a bummer. He's just kind of a dick, always in a bad mood, whiny little baby. And she just can't get over how amazing he is. But the reason that I was intrigued by this book is because it is a book, you know, about obsession, and, you know, romantic obsession is something that I do enjoy reading about. And she is in this very unhealthy, toxic relationship, and she is very obsessed with this man. And, you know, the amount of cyber stalking that happens is, you know, I want to say a lot, but unfortunately also I feel like maybe it's kind of commonplace. But the thing that makes this unusual in terms of her romantic obsession is she sort of craves for him to be disgusted by her, to hate her, to just generally think she sucks. And so she kind of craves that while simultaneously always trying to win him over. But then when she does kind of win him over, well, then he's not thinking she's disgusting and horrible enough. And so now she's kind of bummed about it, you know? She kind of wishes that he and his ex-girlfriend would like just try to murder her or something so that she can, you know, feel a little more alive, I guess. So this is a very unhealthy, unwell gal. She's got a lot of, you know, issues. There's some other struggles that she's dealing with unrelated to her romantic relationship. But I did really enjoy the book, but it's not like a horror novel by any means, not even horror novel adjacent. It's just toxic relationship goo. And I have made a video that I will be putting out about this one, but I already feel a little, I don't know, hesitant about the fact that I even made a video about this one, because it's just not the, you know, it's just not the type of decapitation style content that I'm trying to bring you, you know? The next book that I read is Survivor Song by Paul Tremblay, and you know, I'm always talking about Paul Tremblay, always talking about how, do I love Paul Tremblay books? I think so, but question mark. And that is also how I feel about this one. So this one, I enjoyed reading it, but I was shocked because even sometimes when his books like frustrate me a little bit more because there's so many questions that go unanswered, this one really didn't leave much in the way of unanswered questions, which is kind of not super typical for his books. But what it was lacking was like, it wasn't that weird. And his books are generally pretty weird. And so I was already feeling a little discontented by the fact that I read a couple books this month where I'm like, I don't even know that I want to make videos about these because these are just not hitting the mark in terms of disturbing. And then so I was like, okay, but I'll just read a Paul Tremblay and it'll be weird and that'll be good. And it wasn't that weird. So the plot of this one, so it's kind of crazy because this book came out in 2020 during the time of the pandemic, but it was written 2 years prior. And this book definitely has a pandemic-y vibe to it. So it is kind of like a zombie book, but we don't say the Z word in this book. I mean, they do, but they're like, no, they're not zombies. Basically, everybody be getting infected with super rabies. So humans are getting rabies, but it's not normal rabies. Normal rabies has a very long incubation period. This shit, you are going to be rabid within an hour and you are going to be trying to murder everyone. So I will probably still make a video on this one because, we're murdering people and we're doing the violence. I'll probably talk about it, but we're doing the violence in a pretty cool, casual, normal way, like a zombie way. We know the drill with zombies, but okay, they're rabid and it's going to be fatal no matter what. So kind of different because with zombies, they're just gonna keep doing their zombie thing, but this one they're gonna drop dead pretty soon. But basically the story centers around a very, very, very pregnant woman who in the very, very beginning of the book, her husband is murdered by a rabid man. And basically the hospitals, either they're not even accepting people or they're just completely overrun. People do not have the care and emergency services that they need. 911 is going straight to voicemail, and this isn't at a point in which the whole world is completely overrun. There are specific areas that are real problem areas, and this one I think takes place near Boston. And so this super pregnant woman watches her husband be murdered by a super rabies dude, and she gets bit as well. And she calls her friend who is a doctor. And basically the book is the doctor trying to get this pregnant woman who's probably going to become a super rabies pregnant lady any minute now. She's trying to get her to a hospital so that we can do a C-section and get this little baby out of there. And we know she's probably going to be super rabiesed. So, race against the clock. And, we just kind of have other zombie moments popping in and out. And so, yeah, it was a good book, but nothing to write home about. Again, not one of my top Tremblay books, but certainly not a bad one either. So maybe read it, maybe don't. It doesn't matter to me. Okay, so I will say, so those are the 4 books that I completed in the month of July. There are a couple books, I hate when I do this, but sometimes I'm double dipping. I'm reading a couple books at a time, so then I'm, kind of messing with the stats a little bit because I have 2-ish other books that I'm kind of reading on the side. Actually, that's a lie. I have 3 books that I'm reading on the side. There's one that I just started that I'm very committed to, but I probably won't finish it this month, so I'll mention that next month, but that is a cutesy little serial killer vibe. The other books that I'm reading, I will just say I am reading Boy Parts, which is a very well-known, controversial, disturbing book. So more to come on that at a later date. And I'm, reading a nonfiction book. So I'll talk about the other books I'm reading once I have completed them, perhaps in the month of August. But hey, I just want to let you know, I read more than 3 books, okay? Which is my very low bar to surpass. So thank you so much for joining me. I will see you next time. Bye.